All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, bathing in the outdoors of California, blue skies. And what better place to talk about Lions at Chargers, which we'll get into. We'll also talk about Packers Steelers and Colts Patriots, which will be a bit of a come down for the Germans, our German friends, after they get to see Chiefs Dolphins. But let's start off with Lions Chargers. The look ahead on this was pretty close to pick, but after seeing what the Chargers served up on Monday Night Football, the line is now inching towards 2.5 Lions. The total is 48.5. What do you make of this one, Drew?
Man, yeah, that was ultimately a sweat-free cover for the Chargers last night. But I don't think you can come out of that game feeling super good about that team. There were some offensive woes, to put it politely, and I think it kind of has boiled down to two things. They are missing talent in the wide receiving core outside of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has a very specific skill set. It doesn't feel like they're utilizing him exactly the way that they should all the time. And then they're not getting anything else from anyone else. And Josh Palmer being absent last night, you could feel it. Like there was nothing downfield for that team. And that's a problem. Like if this is, if we literally have to force Justin Herbert back into the Lombardi box from last year, where he is doing nothing but, dump offs to the running backs. And for whatever reason, even that wasn't especially successful as they couldn't connect very often last night. It's just a stagnant offense. I liked a handful of plays I saw from Justin Herbert where he was operating out of structure. I think they need more of like actually designing plays that take him out of structure, if that's even a concept that makes sense. But, that's where he is his best. He was good at avoiding pressure at times, but ultimately took a lot of sacks in that game, which brings me to my other key point about the Chargers. This offensive line is really, really suspect. You had huge contributions from Trey Pipkins last year, as in the absence of Slater. He has regressed back to his draft capital and, what you would expect from a guy who was drafted where he was. Zion Johnson is not performing at the level you would expect so far this season. And just in general, the absence of Lindsley at center is sort of maybe the key for why this unit overall is not protecting in to the degree that you would have expected. So there's talent on this offensive line. Maybe they get it together. But that's sort of where it starts when it comes to, can the Chargers be the explosive offense they want, that they claimed they wanted to be in the offseason? Because we're not seeing it right now. And you can give the Jets defense plenty of credit for that. They were awesome yesterday. But I still really worry about this Chargers team against the Lions team that has the ability to generate pressure. Hutchinson is taking a step forward this year. Alan McNeil, one of the better kind of cooler stories, as he had two pretty empty seasons all of a sudden now in a breakout year. And, a defensive coordinator that knew when to push the right buttons in terms of when to blitz when he was facing Jimmy G. If that's sort of the approach the Lions defense brings to this game, I can very much see the defense being relatively successful. And I think the point that I really want to kind of make about the Lions and why it makes sense that they're favored here. They have a good offensive coordinator, a guy we know is good. We don't really know what Kellen Moore is, I don't think, even with these weapons and with this system, because of all of some of the, the injuries and just in general, the lack of talent in the wide receiving core. But we know Ben Johnson is good, and he now has the opportunity to do some self-evaluation. The 6-2 record, I think, speaks to this Lions team being for real. Their point differential is for real. And, the Lions coming out of their bye with some new looks, some new wrinkles, and some new ways to attack, particularly the weakness of this Chargers defense, which is their pass defense, is a realistic expectation. If the Lions can put scoreboard pressure on the Chargers here, can they win by 3 points or more? Absolutely. The adjustment off of the look ahead is perfectly fine to square, in my opinion. The adjustment off the preseason look ahead, which was Chargers -2.5, is perfectly fine to square, considering the injuries to the offensive line and the wide receiving core. So it's a very uncomfortable place to be like, yeah, let's lay 2.5 with the Lions on the road. But I think his Lions are pass.
Yeah, I think the line is accurate. I don't really want to get super involved with the Lions at 2.5, but I agree with all your points. I think The sneaky thing about the Chargers at the moment is Herbert. I don't know if it's because of his finger, which he seems to be really favoring and seems to be in his head all the time. And it's just affecting his mechanics, which is weird to think of a non-throwing hand that's affecting your mechanics. But I guess if you're worried about it getting hit and it's sending you to IR or something, then maybe that is reasonable. But he was terrible against the Jets. And to me, the two things that really stood out, one, 5.3 yards average depth of target. There was just nothing down the field. And it's so strange to think of Josh Palmer and his absence kind of ruining an offense. But it kind of feels like that at the moment, because now they're leaning on guys like Jalen Guyton and Quentin Johnston, who doesn't seem like he's ready for, a wide receiver 2 role opposite Keenan Allen. And then Herbert was minus 10.3 completion percentage over expected. Like, he's just missing guys. And there was some interception opportunities that weren't taken advantage of. So when you add that to the fact that he's not playing that well at the moment and he's missing 2 of his top 3 wide receiver weapons because Mike Williams is done, and the offensive line isn't good outside of Rashawn Slater, there's just not that much to like about the offense at the moment. And that's the strong part of the team, because the defense isn't that good. The defense it's a good defensive line with Khalil Mack having a bounce back year. Joey Bosa was excellent against the Jets and had his best game in a while. My man, Tuli Tuipulotu, if that is the correct pronunciation, he adds something as well. Yeah, and so the D-line is good, and they're a good rushing defense. And the only thing that would give me pause about Detroit is that, given that teams haven't really been able to run on the Chargers, is that this game is likely going to be in Jared Goff's hands. And that just always introduces some variance. I don't think Goff is good enough that that's fine, and they're rightfully favored, and they'll probably win. But makes you a little bit nervous that Jared Goff on the road, it's probably going to be up to him. The Lions, let us not forget that 2 games ago for the Lions, they got absolutely massacred by the Baltimore Ravens. They got destroyed in that game. And they were fine against the Raiders. I don't think that was an ultra impressive performance, but just the fact that they got so manhandled by the Ravens in the trenches on both sides gives me a little bit of pause that, maybe this team isn't just a team that, just waltzes in and wins games like this on the road. But I do think it seems like the offensive line will be healthier. The defensive line is what it is at this point. Aiden Hutchinson should be able to tee off on the Chargers O-line. But, what do you think of the Lions at the moment? Do you think the market's trading them as, potentially a bit better than 3 points above average on a neutral? Do you think that's accurate?
I think that's pretty close. I think the Lions are a team that can be schemed against if you have good coaching staff, which is what we learned from that Ravens game. And the Chargers are not a good coaching staff. Like, the points you make about the depth of target, the way they were utilizing Keenan Allen last night. What were we doing? Like, Sauce Gardner only stays on the outside. Get Keenan Allen is your only kind of dynamic weapon. Get him inside more. Get him some routes. Get him in the seam. I really just didn't understand what the intention, what the plan was, and that's a problem. And if the Lions are up against a team that has outstanding coaching, then I think they can be beaten, because they're not super crisp. They are a little raw. They are a little young. They are prone to making some mistakes. And your point about the Raiders game is super fair. Like, that somehow that cover was in the balance at the end of that game, despite them outgaining the Raiders 500 to 100 or something absurd. Like, that was one of the more lopsided contests I've watched on, and it was still came down to the last play, and the Lions converting a 4th down and not giving the ball back to the Raiders with a chance to cover. So yeah, the Lions are a sketchy bet. I think that's very fair. But the worse, the more, they have a coaching advantage in this matchup, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of the only reason that has me kind of believing that 2.5 is fine. If you want to get involved in this game, it's Lions or pass.
Yeah. One thing with the Lions before we move on is that right now they have the 6th best pass defense by EPA. I just don't buy that. I don't think that's that good.
Very fair.
I don't think it's a good pass. I don't think it's an above average pass defense necessarily. Yes. Is the thing that, and look, it's never all equal this way, but like Jimmy Garoppolo missed Devontae Adams on 3 wide open touchdown passes. One of them was from 98 yards. The other was like a 60-yard bomb. And those were wide open plays that were breakdowns in the in the Detroit secondary. So I think the team is a little bit suspect. I think that they are, I think they're a slightly better version of like the Seahawks. I think they're closer to a team like the Seahawks than they are teams like the Eagles and the Niners. But they are going up against not great opposition here. So they should do it.
Yeah, Seahawks got the better of them, by the way.
Well, yeah, that's the thing as well, is that Jared Goff. The Seahawks won that game because Jared Goff threw a pick six, and that was pretty much the game. So we will see. Very strange matchup. Don't have a great. Well, I feel like I do have an okay feel for both these teams. I don't think either of them are that good. I think the Lions are a slightly above average team, and the Chargers are an average team at the moment with their health situation. All right. Before we get to another couple of average teams in the Packers and the Steelers, a reminder that all eyes will be on East Rutherford Sunday night. You don't want to miss a matchup between stars Sauce Gardner and Devontae Adams as the Raiders travel east to face the Jets. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Quick one for you off topic. Do you think Max Crosby can win Defensive Player of the Year if the Raiders go 7-10?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think there's scope for shock and awe in the Defensive Player of the Year market. I like Roquan Smith at 100-1. I think I personally think that the idea that it is a closed 3-horse race is not correct.
I agree. I just worry that Crosby has to play the Chiefs twice and the Dolphins once more, and I feel like he might just get lit up in those games because his teammates aren't very good, and that'll be all she wrote. But wouldn't rule it out. I think he's certainly the fourth favorite in that market. Anyway, one of the top 3 favorites is TJ Watt, and he plays in the next game we're going to talk about, which is Steelers hosting the Packers. Steelers -3.5. This is the beauty of betting, Drew. This game would cause a physical aversion for me if I wasn't invested in Mike Tomlin Coach of the Year. Because I am a Tomlin man, a Tomlinite, like yourself. You were first on the Tomlin bandwagon. He's your man. KOC is my man. But I am with the Tomlinites, and they're 3.5-point favorites here. The total is 38. What are you expecting from this game? Are you expecting anything from Jordan Love?
No. I think that's kind of the key. And honestly, the fact that this opened 3 and it's been one-way action Steelers is not support for the Steelers with extra rest. It's not support for Mike Tomlin, who is an above-average coach in every respect of what he is doing to get his team prepared for a given game and a given week. It is literally people just absolutely dying to fade the Packers after what they saw in a comfortable win and cover against the Rams. This Packers team is really, really, really unimpressive. And I guess it's worth noting the Steelers are all of a sudden getting a lot healthier at some key positions. Deontay Johnson being back in the fold for this offense gives them quite an important dimension because they were really having a tough time getting it done through the air when it was the George Pickens and I can't even remember wide receiver 3's name, but Tavon Austin. Yes, Austin. Thank you. Yeah, Allen Robinson's done, and Austin has a long way to go to learn how to play the position. So when you boil the Steelers down to a lot of Warren and Najee Harris and targets to George Pickens, who's a mercurial dude, it was awful. And Deontay Johnson being back matters. Curious to see if Pat Freiermuth is back anytime soon. I'm hopeful he is because he's kind of an important piece for Kenny Pickett. And I think that in general, the Steelers team, on offense did show you something of note at times against the Titans that you can, kind of hope they continue to build on, if not kind of continue to get to 20. That seems like their ceiling. And a good day for the Steelers getting to 20. Is that enough to beat the Packers? Yes. Is it enough to cover 3.5? Maybe. Minka Fitzpatrick likely back for this game. At least he is trending in terms of being available at practice. TJ Watt. Yeah, we need him. We need him big time. Although I got to tell you, boy, oh boy, did they hit on Joey Porter Jr.
Yep.
My goodness gracious. That guy could play. He's good. And just in general, they lose Holcomb, not great. Like he was showing some positive plays, some positive progression. But you still have Highsmith, you still have TJ Watt, you have Cam Hayward back in the fold now. Like this is a good defense. And you know what the Packers struggled against? The Packers have struggled against bad defenses all year, and now they have to face a good defense. This does not spell success to me whatsoever. The Packers are a sloppy team. They are prone to fumbling in bad situations. They are prone to making very, very poor procedural mistakes. And it looks like Matt LaFleur has kind of had all he can handle in terms of the mistakes here. But that's what you get when you have a unit that is as young as the Packers are overall. Their skill position group, their quarterback, nobody came into this season with experience whatsoever outside of Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones has been in and out with injury, and he looks frustrated at times too with his usage and his role. So I don't really see this changing anytime soon for the Packers and seeing this offense emerging. Certainly not against the Steelers team that is getting healthier and has some elite playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. So I agree with the move from 3 to 3.5. I think at 3.5, this is probably a pass now. But the side in total is telling you this game is going to be either 20-16 or 20-17. And I think that's about right. Slight lean to the under of 38, even though there is not a lot of margin there. I think important to keep track of what the weather is going to be like as we are in the month of November. And Pittsburgh is a pretty gnarly place at times. So that's kind of the only X factor that I would keep an eye on there. But I think this probably closes at 37, and I think 3.5 is where we see this meet the close.
Yep. I have a controversial opinion. I think the Steelers might be pretty good. And the reason why, when I say pretty good, I mean like potentially even trend towards slightly above average the rest of the season and be kind of the team that we hoped that they would be before the season when we thought there was scope that they could win the division. And shockingly, they still have scope to win the division. I don't think they're going to do that. But here is something that may shock you, Drew. Since week 3, Kenny Pickett is the 11th ranked quarterback by PFF grade. He's gotten better. And I think a lot of that is just avoiding the negative backbreaking plays that were more in the arsenal previously. And he was dreadful in the first 2 games. But since then, he's been much more competent, and he was relatively competent down the back end of last season. So maybe it was just that he got concussed against San Francisco, and that just threw him off. Telling you this concussion
we've been saying it for freaking 9 weeks, man.
Brock Purdy plays like an MVP candidate every time out until he gets concussed, and then he just starts throwing interceptions for fun.
Yes.
Tua Tagovailoa, his 3 picks against the Packers last year. Like,
yes,
might be something there. And
so there's signal.
Yeah. So Pickett, I think, is fine. Like, we were talking about him as, in the cadre of Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson and these kind of guys. I think he's definitely better than that. And I think he's probably closer to, he's probably slightly worse than Geno Smith, but I don't think he's that far off. With the way Broderick Jones is playing on the offensive line, they were able to run the ball against the Titans, which is stunning to me because I know the Titans' run defense isn't what it was last year, but the fact that they were able to move the ball on the ground, the fact that it's gone a little under the radar too, that like Deontay Johnson is one of the 20 best wide receivers in the NFL, and
he's really good.
He's really, really good. And Pickett's throw to him was an absolute dime to win the game against the Titans effectively. So I think that with Deontay, with Pickens, with a functional offensive line, with Warren and Harris, who are what they are, but they were able to move the ball a bit against the Titans, with Pickett competence, all of a sudden, I don't think it's a great offense, but it might be approaching an average offense. And if you have that with a defense that's gotten Cam Hayward back, that all of a sudden gets Minkah Fitzpatrick back, that has Joey Porter playing like this, that has Highsmith and Watt on the defensive line, like I think this is a fairly solid team. And they go up against the Packers team, which I think the Packers defense is probably about average. I don't think that's a bad unit, but on offense, now Jordan Love, no one in America watched Green Bay against the Rams, and why should they? But that was probably Jordan Love's best game as a pro, where he was 0.24 EPA. It wasn't all yak either, which is key. He had a good completion percentage over expected. And he had an 83 PFF grade. So against the defense, it's not great in Los Angeles, but isn't terrible either. And so I think that's encouraging. the same time, I still don't think he's very good. And Christian Watson is a mess, and they don't have any weapons, and the offensive line isn't very good. So I think 3.5 is about the right number. But what do you think overall on the idea that the Steelers might actually be halfway decent the rest of the way?
I mean, part of me thinks you're just trying to play a prank on me and get my hopes up that Tomlin might actually win Coach of the Year before it all goes sideways. But I, in seriousness, I lose track of the examples of a team who is talented enough to be middle of the pack or better than middle of the pack on paper at the beginning of the season, suffers some injuries, has some bad performances, puts together a really poor statistical profile, but then gets healthier and gets better. And because they have banked some of these wins when they were playing poorly, is in decent position to secure a good playoff spot. Like, this happens every year. There are one or two teams like this. And, you can point to last year's Vikings as a good example. Like, yeah, they had a lot of weird, fluky, high leverage wins. They got to 13 wins when it was all said and done, and we knew they weren't very good. But I do think the Steelers, if they can continue to improve, because they are a young team and they do have some decent fundamentals and they are well coached, at least from the overall preparation standpoint, if not the outstanding scheming that you would hope that Canada would learn to, improve upon. But, there is absolutely a blueprint for this type of team finding their way to 11 or 12 wins and being a much higher seed in the playoffs than anybody realistically expected. Now, because the Ravens are kind of running away and they only got one more game against the Ravens, I don't know if that gives the Steelers any higher landing spot than 5th. But if the Steelers are your number one wild card team, I would not be shocked by that, just because, as you're laying out, like, they're getting healthier, they are improving, and if Pickett continues to distance himself from some of the mistakes he made in the beginning of the season for whatever reason he made them, that can only really help this team continue to evolve and grow and improve. And what else is kind of key about this, Jay? We're at the time of the season where we have tape on all of these teams. There is clear ways to identify tendencies, what these teams are doing well, what they're doing, what they want to do to succeed in certain situations. You know what there's not, Jay? Tape of Pittsburgh doing anything good. And so there's really no way to prepare for a team where you're really not sure what their game, their plan A is for, a high leverage situation. So they have the element of surprise in that, whatever they do ultimately come up with in some of these big games coming up down the stretch here, or coming up soon. They may have a little bit of an advantage of surprise, given that, there's not a lot of success this year outside of the wins.
Yeah, and let me tell you, if they win this game, they go to 6-3. Then you just got to beat a very shaky Deshaun Watson to go to 7-3, and then the Tomlinite lid is completely off at that point. And then after that, at Cincinnati, probably lose that game. Arizona, New England, at Colts. Could be looking very good. It's conceivable the Steelers are 10-4 in a month or so. So that's quite frightening. But it's in play. All right. Before we get to Colts Patriots in Frankfurt, a reminder that Saturday, November 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern, Vaughn Dalzell, Brad Thomas, and Eric Froton are answering your college football betting questions for Week 11, including a massive Big Ten matchup when number 3 Michigan heads to Happy Valley for a battle with number 11 Penn State. A little appetizer before we see Michigan, Ohio State later in the season, which I was hoping was going to be a battle for the Heisman, though those blokes in the Pac-12 might have something to say about that, but hoping Marv can pull that out. Anyway, two teams that could use Marvin Harrison Jr., the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. The Colts are 1-point favorites in Germany. The total is 43.5. Do you have any play on this game, Drew?
Yeah, I haven't bet it yet, and I'm really struggling to come up with squaring the current line with our preseason expectation between these teams. You want to guess what the preseason look ahead was on a neutral between the Colts and the Patriots?
Just trying to think, we're so many like quarterbacks and players away at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine the Patriots were slight favorites.
They were -5.
Is that right?
Yeah. The Colts preseason expectation was they were a bottom 5 team in the NFL, and the Patriots were league average, if not a little bit better than league average expectation in terms of market rating. And, the Patriots have had a couple of defensive injuries that matter. Certainly, losing Judon and Gonzalez is a thing. The offensive line kind of being a huge step backwards from what we remember at peak Patriots team has been a thing. The Patriots missing all of their wide receiving threats is a thing. But the Colts are, they have Gardner Minshew out there, and it's not always the most impressive style of offense. And what's weird is that, I maybe short sold it for our German friends if this is going to be an entertaining game, because there are a couple of tapes of Gardner Minshew's Colts that were wildly entertaining from earlier this season. And in general, the Colts have been a weird, wild, fun team just in terms of football entertainment in a year where we haven't had a lot of that. But certainly what we saw last week from the Colts offensively, like they didn't have to do much, but they also didn't do much. And it was one of the kind of weirder final score lines, because you take away the huge backbreaking turnovers for the Panthers in that game, and it was probably played somewhat close. And so you can't really come out of that game saying, well, the Colts deserve a healthy upgrade here. But you can come out of the Patriots Commanders game and say, there was a lot of opportunity, a lot of scope for them to find their way back into that one. The Commanders at times tried to hand that game to them, and yet they still lose by 4 in a game you were favored almost by 4. So or favored by 3, at least. I think that was the close, but it's just, I get why we're here with the Colts as small favorites in this spot. Colts have a little bit more difficult travel here because they did go to Carolina last week, and now making the trip to Germany is non-trivial, whereas the Patriots were home and have to fly to Germany. But I think ultimately the Patriots are kind of now in a spot where I don't really think it serves them to win. They're clearly out of the playoff mix. There is no real upside for this team at this point. And if they just so happen to try to kick the tires on some of the players down the roster to see if they're any good, and they lose in the process, that benefits them, because I don't get the sense that they really are invested in Mac Jones as the long-term answer at quarterback, and the opportunity to draft a top 2 quarterback would be a quick turnaround for this franchise. So, keeping my eye on the Giants and the Patriots right now is the 2 teams that I would say are the most incentivized to lose, because they desperately need to upgrade their quarterback situations, and finishing 2-15 would go a long way to getting them there. So I'm not saying the Patriots are pulling the plug on the season, that they're tanking. I mean, Bill Belichick obviously seems like he's in it just to win games and try to chase the Shula's record for all-time wins, although at this pace he's going to need to coach for 10 more years. But ultimately, it doesn't seem to benefit the Patriots long term to really fight hard and win this game. And I guess I'm going to keep an eye on what they elect to do with some of their personnel as an indication here. And if it seems like the Patriots aren't really pushing their players through practice, if it seems like they're more inclined to keep guys on IR, then I think it's a pretty clear sign that that they're not necessarily playing to win. So Colts are pass here, but a ton of it kind of depends on what the Patriots, what they communicate to us through some of their injury decisions this week.
Yeah, Colts for me as well. I think, look, they have a slightly better offense, slightly better defense, and they're more incentivized to win the game. So I think that they would be the side. On the Colts, look, I think the offensive line is playing better than it has in the past couple of years. Jonathan Taylor he hasn't gotten the results yet, but he looks more explosive than he did last year, certainly when he was carrying that niggling ankle injury. And the fact that they gave him 18 carries against Carolina versus just 7 for Zach Moss, I think that's an indication of where his health is at as well. That had been more of a 50-50 split until that point. The Colts defense, I think, is just a solid unit. And also in this AFC South, where it feels like everyone has anointed Jacksonville, and certainly, they're a greater than 65% chance, 70% chance to win that division, but it's not over yet. The Jags are 3-point dogs at home to the Niners, and so if they lose that as expected, all of a sudden they're 6-3. They don't have the tiebreak against Houston. the Colts would be 5-5 with a win here, and all of a sudden the division looks a lot more open. So I think everything points Colts at this point. The Patriots are the AFC version of the Packers, I think, but somehow even more hopeless, I think, because I don't think they have as many good players as the Packers. So there's no incentive for me to get involved in the Patriots. In terms of the futures markets, I don't think there's any way to really bet these teams either. Nothing super appetizing on that front. Even though the Colts are alive to win their division, I don't think that they're actually going to end up doing that. And so, yeah, our German friends can bathe in a 2017 Colts victory.
Yeah, Patriots still with the tough schedule. Fewest wins on the table for you?
Fewest wins still on the table. I don't quite think so. Unfortunately, I watched the Carolina Panthers play against the Indianapolis Colts last week. They seem to be in quite good position for that. Though I will say that Kyler Murray coming back does shake that up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Otherwise, they would have been the clear team. But the fact that, I mean, I don't understand why people don't rate Kyler Murray at all. People talk about him as though he's like a bottom 10 quarterback. Kyler Murray is this time 2 years ago, he's the MVP favorite, like literally. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah. And now people he's a complete afterthought. I guess the Patriots only have 2 wins. I still think they have probably enough competence that they end up at 4-13. But what do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think it's live. I think, again, the Giants and the Patriots are the 2 teams I would circle in that division, because Carolina, you're right, they're absolutely they're horrifically bad right now. But maybe by the time we get to December, they're not as bad. Maybe they get healthier. Maybe they figure anything out that works for them offensively. Maybe the game starts to slow down for Bryce Young, and because they don't have their first overall pick next year, or their round 1 pick, which would be first overall at this moment, that doesn't give them any incentive to try to pack it up for 2024. So Panthers could play their way out of the hole. Cardinals definitely could play their way out of the hole. And I think that your point on Kyler Murray, if you kind of just take an average Kyler Murray season when he was, oh, by the way, coached by Cliff Kingsbury, he would be a top 10 EPA per play quarterback this year. That's how bad quarterbacking has been overall. And so, I think expecting him to I guess if he comes back and looks like the Kyler Murray we know, which, depends a lot on health, because usually there was a very clear correlation. He played his best when he was feeling healthy. We should not be surprised. I think it's not a great team around him, particularly the offensive line and running back injuries they're dealing with. But I like the idea of Cardinals and Panthers playing their way into, 3, 4, 5 wins here. And again, I could see the Giants and the Patriots landing on 2.
Yeah, I don't understand why. So right now in the market, the Cardinals are plus 200 and the favorite to have the worst record with their 1 win. And the Panthers and the Giants are both plus 280. I'm not sure the Cardinals should be the favorite to have the worst record. They have some winnable games on the schedule, not least of all this week, where they're 1-point dogs to Atlanta. So, I'm not entirely sure I believe in that. If they're going to play Kyler Murray, which it seems like they are, and it's not like you bring Kyler Murray to play him 3 games and then sit him the rest of the season. I think he's just going to be the quarterback the rest of the way, at least until the last couple of weeks. So, I don't think the Cardinals will end up with the worst record. All right. On that note, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and subscribe. Thank you to everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you soon.